So I'm going to talk swiftly. I'm going to improv a little and skip over a few of the extraneous parts of my spiel, just because time is of the essence, and we have 23 minutes. And I'm going to use every second of it. That's my Aunt Harriet, everyone. Okay. Something I can read you to start off. I'm Jonah, if we haven't met yet. Nice to meet you. I wrote this for the CMT newsletter maybe about a year ago. It's called The Lucky Ones. My fellow CMT travelers, I would like to invite you, if I may, to take a moment to consider how lucky we are to have CMT. Don't adjust your newsletter, and no need to get contacts. You heard me right. I think we are lucky to have what we have. As I get older with this challenge, I begin to see the blessings in this, the hidden gifts, the pieces of my wisdom bestowed to all of us if you simply allow yourself to see them. The greatest of these, in my opinion, is humility. I see so often what a rare quality this can be in our society. True humility, the ability to understand in your very core how fragile we really are, how vulnerable and how reliant. This is a true gift, because those that live in denial of these absolute truths are at a far greater risk than any of us. By nature of our condition, we have no choice but to be constantly aware of our weakness, always focused on our need for help, and ever seeking to work within the unchangeable parameters of our bodies. This is a gift. I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit. As another lucky blessing we all have is the ability to see greatness in others. Those friends, family, and especially strangers who ease our challenge with their love and support. I was in Italy last fall. I went to a cafe and ordered pizza for lunch. All pizzas in Italy come in a small, round, and uncut form. The waitress, who spoke very little English, brought my lunch and walked away. I began to cut into it with my non-traditional, sloppy, and mostly effective style. A few minutes later, the waitress walked over to me and, without saying a word, picked up my plate and walked away. I sat there wondering what had just happened and hoping to get my pizza back. 2 minutes later, she returned. She placed my pizza down in front of me, only now it was cut into perfect, forkable pieces. It was so nice. She didn't say a word. She simply observed that I could use some help and decided to give some. It is moments like that that make me feel lucky to have this challenge. Any other patron at that cafe may not have had a reason to learn that their waitress was a queen in disguise. Yet, as a result of having CMT, I got to see her true heart, and I got to connect with a fellow human being. Blessed. Recently, I worked at a campus a couple years ago. 2 years ago. I was working at a camp with a group of kids. There was a volunteer working with us for the weekend. She was beautiful and I was attracted to her. And in the midst of my trying to woo her with my abundance of cool, I tripped in front of her while carrying a large kettle of hot coffee. It was a mess. I was sprawled out on the floor and looking as unsuave as one can possibly look. And yet, as I walked back to my house to change, I realized that even in that moment, I was strangely lucky. I don't get to rely on the false machismo to connect with women. I have no choice but to rely on my strength to connect to them, to rely on my ability to fall down and to get back up, on the way that I find myself in an embarrassing situation and choose to keep on going. Hard as moments like this can be, it is a lucky thing to have to stay grounded in my spirit and not in my ability to carry coffee with grace. Don't get me wrong, I don't think all the parts of CMT and its experience are delightful. Many of them simply are not. But I challenge you, as I challenge myself often, to remember with the hard parts come some pretty amazing parts. We are better and stronger and more enlightened people as a result of CMT. We understand things now that we never could without it. And in that regard, color us lucky. At the end, there's a abbreviated version of that on these cards up here that I printed out for you that I invite you to take one if you're so inspired. I am not a speech giver, so I didn't write a speech. I write notes and I'll just talk to you like I would if it was one-on-one in my living room, so bear with me because that comes with ranting at times, and I'm being very careful of time. I'm Jonah. I'm from Maryland originally. I live in Colorado for the last 15 to 20 years now. My family has CMTX. My grandmother had it. My mother and two of her three sisters have it. Those 4 girls gave birth to 9 children. 3 out of those 9 have it. How are you? And yeah, for what that's worth, that's what we've got in the Berger family tree. I moved to Colorado about 15 years ago to kind of find my own identity, to break away from Maryland and from my family and the connection to them. And with the move to Colorado, not only found my own identity, but found a new grip on CMT, on my disability. Something about the rugged nature of Colorado gives way to a lot of opportunities to test one's strength and one's abilities. 3 things I'll tell you about in kind of an abbreviated fashion. Number 1 is Mount Elbert. This is the tallest mountain in Colorado. This is the 2nd tallest mountain in the lower 48 states. And I climbed it with a group of kids one summer. I ironically signed up for it because you had to sign up for 1 kid trip to be support staff on. I thought Elbert sounded like a nice friendly name. So I was like, I'll do Elbert, that'll be an easy one. Of course, I signed up to climb the tallest mountain in Colorado. And at 5:15 a.m. with headlamps on, me, about 15 to 20 kids, and about 8 other staff set up the hill. People without any physical constraints would probably go up and back down in 6 to 8 hours. Took me 14 of those hours to get up to the top and back down, but as you can hear, I went to the top and came back down. Pretty amazing day on multiple levels. Number 1, it was my first taste of my power and my ability to define my accomplishments. And that CMT, while a presence, was not going to be the determinant factor in what I can and cannot do. I was going to be. Number 2, kids were watching. And I've worked with kids my entire career, but that was the day I understood that I had the ability, just based on being an adult with a special need, to teach children by my actions alone. My mother taught me in that exact way. Very seldomly did she sit down and say, here's how to live with CMT, son. She just lived and lives, easily busier than any other mom of any of my friends, easily more attacking of the daily grind than anyone I've ever known. And as a result, God bless it, I picked up on this amazing gift of wisdom of not letting what you have define who you are, and especially what you can do. The second one was RAGBRAI, which is an annual bike ride across the state of Iowa. And about 11,000 people get on bikes and go across Iowa. It's about 75 to 80 miles a day. I did 3 of these days back to back. My butt is still sore 8 years later, I promise you. And that was kind of a big example for me, not just of physical achievement, but more so about the effect that my disability has on others. You'd be amazed how many people would bike by me and without even looking in my direction, would just whiz by and be like, amazing, dude. Great job. Keep it up, man. They saw my braces, they saw what I was trying to do, and they gave their encouragement. It made me feel like gold. There was this one guy who was an orthodontist from New Jersey, and he was so excited, and he kept passing me, and I would pass him, and every time he came past me, it was like it was the first time. He's like, you look great, you're doing great, keep it up! Like, he was so excited, man. It was awesome. Love that guy. There was a brother and sister team. The brother was in a wheelchair. The sister was on a bike built onto the back of the wheelchair, and she was biking and he was pushing his wheels. And I watched as people just flew past them, and I was like, look, you're missing it. This is the most amazing thing ever. And we were going up this one hill. Don't let anyone tell you that Iowa is flat, because it's not. It's hilly as crap. And we're going up this hill, and I'm working, man. And so I could only imagine. And she was struggling, and she was getting slower and slower. And these 2 brothers come flying around either side of me, without saying a word, bike onto either side of them, holding their own bikes, reach over, grab theirs, and pedal them up the hill. A, I'm on my bike crying like a child with a skinned knee. B, I was able to witness that moment, not just because I was right there, but because I knew to stay focused on it, because I knew to pay attention to it. And that is a result of having CMT. Without CMT, I fly by, man. I miss that golden moment that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. It's a blessing. Triathlon was the third one. About 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, I did a triathlon. It's absolutely as hard as it sounds. I'm not trying to make it sound easy, because it wasn't. But the notable piece from that day was the finish line. Everyone started together, obviously, but then everyone came to the finish line and we're done. About 45 minutes later, Jonah comes around the corner, thinking they're packed up and done and gone home by then, but whatever, I just wanted to finish, I didn't care. Everyone who participated in the triathlon waited. No one left. Everyone gathers around the finish line because they heard that a guy with a disability was going to finish, and they're all applauding as I come around the corner. Again, crying. like a child, man, it was awesome. But it's that moment that I get to see what people are really made of, that I get to see what people are really about. And despite what you see on the news, despite what our society loves to preach, the human race is an amazing race of people. The human race are great-hearted people. And because I have a disability, I got privy to a dose of that, and millions of doses of that throughout my life. That's a blessing. The reason I share with you the 3 things that I've taken on thus far in my life is not to set myself apart from you and say, I am someone who accomplishes big feats, and you are not. No, I'm telling you because I am you, because you are me. We are the same, and what these 3 things have taught me is that we get to be the determinant factor in what we accomplish. Anybody in this room can do a triathlon, can climb a mountain, can ride your bike across any state you want to. As long as you are not restricted by the fear that comes along with weakness, okay? I was afraid in all 3 of these things, but I fought through that fear and I moved forward. And my point to you is, you be the determinant factor in what you can accomplish. You decide, not CMT, okay? The book, about 8 years ago, I wrote He Walks Like a Cowboy. It's my take on one life lived with CMT, lived with challenge, and lived facing a challenge. I think it's a good tool to help someone who does not have a physical disability understand what it's like to have a physical disability. I also think it's a good tool if you have CMT to be understood by someone who gets it. I'll read you the first chapter, which is only 1 page long. It's called The Inkling. And it goes like this. I remember one day in middle school, I was in the 6th grade. I remember it in the way that you often remember things from that age, clear in the middle and hazy on the edges. This particular memory has me at home plate, holding a bat and waiting for the pitch from the other team. Gym class was, as you might expect, not my favorite place in the world. Without realizing exactly why, I remember always knowing that I did not feel at ease in gym class. I was in the hot seat every day during 5th period. The pitch came over the plate, and after 2 missed swings, I connected with one. The ball was hit over the second baseman. I ran as fast as I could towards first base. I ran, as I did most of my youth, pretty slowly, and aware of the feeling that something was holding me back. I felt as though my spirit ran a lot faster than my legs. With little trouble, I was thrown out at first and earned my team its 3rd out. We were off to play the field. This is where the memory gets vivid. I remember going to get my glove. I remember the walk from the bench to my shortstop position was greeted with some comments from my dissatisfied teammates that were less than complimentary. My classmates had often commented about the way I ran. To their credit, they were armed with no knowledge of my disability, and they had the maturity level of Jell-O. Yet on that day, the comments sunk in. I remember getting to my position, leaning over to rest my hands on my knees, and feeling for the first time, and very sincerely, that something was wrong with me. That I wasn't just slower or less athletic, I was fundamentally different. The problem with having a realization like that in the 6th grade is that I had no life experience to work with, no stockpile of wisdom to help defend myself. I had no self-help skills with which to gain some perspective on the limitations of my ability and on the affect that others around me would have on my situation. It would have been a perfect moment to receive a visit from my 35-year-old self. Don't worry, kid, this is a blessing in disguise. You're going to climb mountains someday. You're going to be stronger from your weakness someday. You're going to teach others through this struggle someday. Worry not, little man. It really is going to be all right. Instead, I was left that day on that field to do what I have always done. Deal with the frustration, set my course, and go grooving and stumbling on my way down the road. So if it's not that this book is what is keeping me independently wealthy, I promise you that, but in the interest of spreading the word, feel free to visit me at the table and I'll sign a copy for you and we can talk more about the book. A few kind of general themes to cover with you that I really want to kind of hammer home without any sugarcoating. I was in the airport yesterday in Denver getting ready to get on my plane, and I was going through security, and there was a mother with 2 kids, and one of her kids, her son, was not happy about being in line for security. He was grumpy and voicing that. And at one point she turned around to him and she said, so awesome the way she did it, she said, I just want to let you know that you're stressing right now because you're choosing to. She said, stress is a choice, and you're making the choice to be stressed out right now. That's all she said to him. She empowered that kid to understand that you get to choose. And what I found so amazing about that is that to me is the sum and the substance of what I'm talking about today. You have a choice to make. You get to choose how this experience will go. You get to choose whether the disability that we have going through our bodies is going to be a negative constantly, or if it's going to be a positive. It can't be positive all the time. I have my moments where I scream fuck at the top of my lungs trying to button a button, and I'm late, you know? Like, I have those moments. And I throw my brace against the wall at the end of the day sometimes, I do. And I'm depressed sometimes because I'm sick of falling down when there's nothing to trip over. I get all those things. But understand in those moments that it's still your choice. You're the one choosing to be bummed out. Thereby, you can be the one choosing to flip the script and to decide, you know what? I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to focus on the things that I get out of this and not that are taken away from this. Perspective is what you make of it. And I just think it's very important that we remember to be empowered, that we have the choice at the end of the day. Question I want to ask of all of you, just to get a quick, we have 4 minutes, so a very quick sense of the room, is for you to tell me one thing that is great about having CMT. I know it's an interesting question, I know it can be a tough question, but if you're in this room and you have CMT and you're so inspired, will you raise your hand and tell me one thing that you think is a good thing about having CMT? Yes?
Learning patience.
Learning patience. Absolutely. I'm with you. Yes?
Empathy.
Explain.
Being aware around you, not like you were saying, walking by, but taking the time to reflect or meet somebody that may not have CMT but another issue.
Absolutely.
Having compassion.
No doubt about it. What else? Yes?
For me, it has forced me to, not forced me, invited me to pay attention to walking so that I don't fall. But what comes with that is just slowing down a bit and just notice.
Meditative.
Yeah, very
Forced meditation. Right on. What else?
Finding handicap parking permits how to park.
Handicap parking indeed.
I don't have CMT. I had 40-year diabetes. I learned teamwork because when my wife falls down, I pick her up. When I get a low blood sugar, she takes care of me.
My girlfriend has type 1 diabetes, and we do the same thing for each other. Yeah, exactly. Anybody else? Yes.
It's a bit odd, but I've got, I'm newly diagnosed, I've got 3 kids, all of childbearing age. And it's made them have to sit down and start to think in terms of, well, what does it mean to have a disability? What do I want to have a disabled child? Will I abort that child? For their partners, which has produced all sorts of really
Definitely.
quite hard conversations.
You bet, but important conversations, right? So yes, one more.
I work with special needs kids, so it's allowed me to have an understanding of somebody without that, what for them, their feelings.
Amen. So that alone, just going through this life paying attention to other people is something that a good vast majority of people, at least in our culture, aren't encouraged to do. By nature of what we have, we almost are forced to. And there's something pretty wonderful about that. I will close by sharing with you a quote from ER. I loved that show. I just was obsessed with it. And there was a season where one of the nurses had HIV and felt like she was being pushed out of the hospital. And finally she's like, that's it, I'm leaving. I'm not going to let you fire me. I'm walking out on my own terms. And she's walking towards the door and she turns around and one of her closest friends at the hospital is behind the front desk. And she says to him, you know, I'm starting to think that it's not about what we have that matters. It's how you deal with what we have that makes all the difference. She turned around and walked out. And I've never forgotten that because we don't have any control over being born with CMT. We have full control over how that affects our lives. And for whatever it's worth, I want to tell you from the front lines that if you have a positive attitude, that if you have a light attitude, that the weight of disability, the weight of CMT will feel light. If you have a negative attitude and you choose to focus on the negative aspects, then I promise you the weight of CMT will feel heavy. And so don't forget that no matter what neuropathy is going on in our bodies, we are in charge. We get to choose. We have that power, and I'm hoping very much to inspire you to remember that. I cut a bunch of these yellow strings this morning that I would ask before you leave that everyone come up and take one as a sunshiny reminder of that positive attitude and of that premise, and tie it around your wrist and start your collection, or tie it around your steering wheel or your bag or your desk lamp or wherever you want as a way to remember that very concept, that you get to decide how this affects you. I also have up here the thing that I wrote, if you would like to take one of those, and it's beyond my honor to be able to share this time with you, so thank you.